Hello and welcome to another standard video here on the official MTG Arena channel. Today I get to preview Avatar: The Last Airbender a few days before release, and I'm going to do so using this Teamer Lessons deck. So lessons are back in standard, but unlike last time where you had to learn for your lessons to grab them out of the sideboard, now lesson is just a subtype that appears on a number of instants and sorceries, and then you also have a lot of payoff cards in this set that reward you for including lots of lessons in your deck. One of those cards is Accumulate Wisdom, a 2-mana instant that normally lets you look at the top 3 cards of your library, putting one of those in hand, the rest on the bottom of your library. But now if you have 3 or more lessons in your graveyard, you get to put all 3 of those cards into your hand instead. So then it turns into a 2-mana draw 3, which is incredibly powerful. We have other payoffs for including lessons, such as cards that can maybe discount your lesson spells. There's Uncle Iroh, a 3-mana 4/2 with a firebending mechanic, firebending 1. So if this attacks, we get a red mana that we get to use until end of combat, and then it goes away. So we can maybe use it to cast some of our red instants. And then Uncle Iroh also says lesson spells we cast now get a 1-mana discount. So then a lot of our 2-mana lessons will get discounted down to a single mana. Then there's also the Herbalist, a 2-mana 2/3 that can normally tap for mana of any color, but it can also make 2 mana in any combination of colors that we can use to cast our lesson spells. So that can also come in handy, but one of the biggest payoff cards in this deck is Iroh Grand Lotus, a 6-mana 5/5 with firebending 2, and during our turn all the lessons in our graveyard have flashback, with the flashback cost only being a single mana. So now we get to replay all those lessons out of the graveyard, and if we have both Iroh Grand Lotus and Uncle Iroh in play at the same time, now we get to replay all those lessons out of the graveyard for free, because Grand Lotus makes them cost 1 mana, Uncle Iroh discounts them from 1 mana down to 0 mana, so that can also be incredibly satisfying, getting to replay all those spells for free. Then there's also Ren and Shaw, a 4/4 flying dragon with firebending 2. When Ren and Shaw enters, if we cast it and there are at least 3 or more dragons and or lessons in our graveyard, we now get to make a non-legendary token copy of this card, and then we can use the firebending 2 when they both attack to maybe pay 4 mana to give our dragons +2 power until end of turn. Can also activate that multiple times, so that can be an awesome finisher. And we've got another dragon that can maybe benefit from that fire-breathing ability. The Dragonfly Swarm has flying, ward 1 for a bit of built-in protection. When it dies, if there's at least 1 lesson in our graveyard, we get to draw a card, and its power scales with a number of non-creature, non-land cards in our graveyard. So that's why a lot of the cards in this deck are just instants and sorcery lessons, so we get to grow the Swarm and enable all these various synergies. So then taking a look at some of the other lessons, we've got plenty of interaction to drag out the game. We've got Boomerang Basics as a sorcery speed bounce spell. If we bounce our own permanent, we also get to draw a card. Firebending Lesson is a burst lightning that's better if it's targeting creatures if we kick it, as it can deal 5 damage as opposed to 4. And then we also have 2 copies of Seismic Sense, which gets to look at the top X cards of our library, where X is the number of lands we control, to reveal a creature or land and put it into our hand. So don't want to cast this on turn 1, since there's a pretty high chance we'll miss with it, but once we have enough lands in play, this can find a replacement land or find one of our win conditions. Can also make it more likely that we find our different Irohs to set up the free lesson combo. And Seismic Sense also pairs very well with Shared Roots, which is just a new and improved version of Rampant Growth, as it's also a lesson, gets to find any colored basic land and put it onto the battlefield tapped, so that's why we have 2 of each basic land in this build. And then we've got some more card draw with Abandon Attachments, which lets us discard a card to draw 2. Can also speed up the process of enabling our Accumulate Wisdom and setting up some of our other synergies, which require enough lessons in the graveyard. And then we've got some more creature removal with Iroh's Demonstration. Can either deal 1 to each opposing creature or 4 to 1 creature. And then Combustion Technique deals 2 plus the number of lessons in our graveyard to an opposing creature, exiling it in the process. So this also scales nicely as the game goes on. Of course, once we start flashing back spells with Iroh Grand Lotus, we'll start losing some of the number of lessons in our graveyard. So there's a bit of push and pull, but usually it works out fine. And then a mana base, as we mentioned, 2 of each basic to find with shared roots, and then plenty of other mana fixing with Breeding Pool and Stomping Ground, enabling the Verge lands to produce both of their colors as well. And then 2 copies of Spire Bluff as another blue-red untapped land in the early turns. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play with Functional Hand. Gonna just play tap Stomping Ground, not in a hurry to cast my Accumulate Wisdom on 2, so then we can always play Firebending Lesson on turn 2 instead. Alright, Gene Pollinator. So would not be surprised to see the Badger Mole, since then Pollinator can immediately tap for 2 mana. Yep. So I'll just take out the Cub itself. They can make 2 mana in response. Can't really stop that. Didn't have anything to cast. Otherwise, all their creatures would have tapped for an additional green mana, including the Pollinator and the land that's now a creature. So I can go for either Uncle Iroh or Herbalist. Herbalist can maybe cast Ren and Shaw on the following turn. Unclear whether that's something I'm interested in. But I could also go Uncle Iroh, immediately cast Accumulate Wisdom for 1 mana. Maybe find another lesson that I get to cast with a 2 mana from Herbalist. Now Surak. And Llanowar Elves. So likely an Ouroboros deck as well. Alright, I've got my Firebending Lesson, although targeting their creatures now lets them draw. So, go for Uncle Iroh. Let's go blue-red. Accumulate Wisdom, see what we get. Probably just a land. Although, could abandon attachments, honestly. Yeah, let's grab that, I can cast it now. Maybe even discarding the Firebending Lesson, so I keep my payoffs and have as many lessons in the graveyard as possible. And then I can still play a land. Alright, that was a decent turn. Because next turn what I can do is play Iroh Grand Lotus, and with Uncle Iroh in play, that means I get to cast all my lessons for free. Starting with a draw 3 from Accumulate Wisdom. Opponent with a Legend of Kyoshi, the Earthbender, letting them draw a bunch of cards on Chapter 1. Okay, but I'm excited for this turn. So Grand Lotus says, lessons in the graveyard have flashback for 1. Uncle Iroh says they get a 1 mana discount. So let's draw 3. And then can maybe discard and draw. Discarding a lesson that I can also cast for free, like another Accumulate Wisdom. Although I guess I will not have enough lessons in the graveyard for that. So maybe discard Shared Roots, or even the Demonstration, take care of Surak. Now let's do that. Take out Surak, dealing 4. And then I can just mow down all their other creatures here as well. Also can't forget about the Firebending mana that I can still use to cast a technique if I'd like. But yeah, let's just burn everything to the ground. If I take out the forest, it does come back as a land, so maybe I'll just Combustion Technique the Pollinator here. And we can keep the lesson in the graveyard to enable Accumulate Wisdom. Yeah, still a pretty good turn, I'd say. They do get to make an 8/8, so that's kind of scary. So they might have a fight spell, in which case I'll regret not just taking care of the land. The guide lets their allies tap for a mana of any color. And they've got another one. And a Llanowar Elves, alright, not too bad. So, let's cast a few more lessons here. Starting with Shared Roots. Get a land. Accumulated Wisdom, draw 3. Cannot bounce the land back with Boomerang because it says no land permanent, sadly. Definitely want to play Ren and Shaw this turn. And then, let's see. Yeah, I have one more lesson in hand. Yeah, flashing this back, I guess we can use multiple removal spells to take care of the forest. I guess I'll start with a draw 3 from Wisdom again. Find Iroh's Demonstration. This one's a sorcery. Could also deal 1 to each creature, which deals with elves and forests. Yeah, I guess that's fine. Let's see here. Yeah, maybe I don't play Ren and Shaw. Instead, yeah, what happens next turn? It transforms into a 5/4. Let's bounce the guide. Then, let's see, deals damage equal to 2 plus the number of lessons. I guess I'll technique on the forests. And then I can finish off both creatures. Play the Dragonfly, play a tap land, and then we're probably fine for now. So didn't end up using the Firebending mana, but it does go away end of combat, so couldn't have used it to cast my other dragons. I will leave these in the graveyard for now. Can still cast this before attacking, and then use the fire breathing from Iroh to pump up the Swarm, which is also a dragon. But yeah, just wanted to play it safe, deal with all their stuff, and then we should be able to take over. Alright, probably was a better way I could have sequenced some of my spells there, but we got there in the end. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play with a functional hand. Got some removal, some card draw, some mana reduction. Start with a tap breeding pool. And then we'll see how 1 damage to each creature versus 4 damage lines up. Gonna try and hold out on the Accumulate Wisdom. Right, turn 1 Hired Claw. I guess I can use the Combustion technique, although this will scale pretty nicely into the late game. So maybe I'll use the Firebending lesson now, in case there's any pump spells. Now students. Second, size makes sense to ensure a lane for next turn, and then still deal with the student. Could also grab the Swarm, which is reasonable. But I think I just want extra mana, because we have this Accumulate Wisdom that's about to draw 3. And then let's just use a Sorcery Speed Demonstration. Keep the Instant Speed technique for later. So next turn I can go Uncle plus draw 3. And then I can leave up both instants here. Uncle Iroh eats a Burst Lightning. Oh yes. Okay, next up, let's ramp, play Swarm. Got another draw 3 and a bunch of removal in hand. Opponent stuck on 2 mana, so possible they have some 3 drops in hand. A Lightning Strike goes face. The Palace can give a creature Firebending. Alright, let's start by drawing 3. Grow the Swarm some more. And attack for 6. I'll keep up a kicked lesson just in case. A lightning strike going face again. Take my turn, and the Grand Lotus is great here. So first we'll attack. Do want to be mindful with these shock lanes, so I may not want to just play an untapped breeding pool. So I guess we'll go for Iroh, and then I can immediately draw 3, and maybe hit an untapped land, so I don't have to shock myself. Could be unnecessarily risky, I could just hang on to my removal instead, and probably be fine. But yeah, now I can pass with the firebending lesson available at least. Alright, looks like we'll get there. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with what looks like a keeper. Might need some removal. Opponent on a sacrifice deck with a greedy freebooter. Can wait on the Seismic Sense. Mono black so far. And a Zealot. Okay, cannot answer it yet, unless we just want to bounce, but I don't think we do. So I'll probably just pass and then cast the attachments end of turn. Maybe discarding Seismic Sense or Boomerang. Take 4. And Sephiroth. Yeah, that's a good one. Sack Freebooter, drain for 1. Probably don't have time for the Seismic Sense. And I've got an Infestation Sage as well. If I play Uncle Iroh, it's pretty likely to get removed. I think I still want a Shared Route to set up Ren and Shaw for next turn. So then I can bounce Sephiroth. Get an island. And then next turn I'll get the Dragon Token as well. Although against Mono Black that's unlikely to be good enough. Our life total's also dwindling, so can't afford to take many more hits. Heartless Act now also back in Standard, so that might replace Shoot the Sheriff in some decks. So let's see for 4/4 dragons can hold off an attack. My hand's not very good, would love to pick up our draw 3 effect, of course. Maybe some creature removal. So it does not seem like they're playing white, which is usually the secondary color in the sacrifice decks. So maybe there's a payoff for being mono black. Haven't seen any new cards yet, so maybe we're about to. Deadly Precision. We've seen these effects before. And a journal. Okay. So Sephiroth might be transforming here. And then a 5/5 can attack past our 4/4. So we could be dead here. Sack the Zealot, Sephiroth transforms. And yeah, I'll chump, but this game looks over. Another Sage. And that's a land, so play Uncle Iroh. Pass a turn. And an attack will do it. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play with a fine hand. Got some removal, turn 2 Herbalists into a Swarm, hopefully find some more card draw effects. Yeah, I guess I'll just play this tapped still. We found our card draw, so now we just want to get enough lessons in the graveyard. Alright, perfect. This can make 2 mana for Shared Roots. Get Mountain, and I think just cast a Dragonfly. And then next turn, maybe I'll hit another land drop to make our Seismic Sense better. Opponent's also gonna accumulate Wisdom. So it could be a similar matchup. Okay. So, step 1, let Seismic Sense. See what we can find. Just a land. In that case, Herbalist can attack. Hopefully they present a creature, and then we can both Firebending Lesson and Accumulate Wisdom, as our opponent's going to cast a second copy. Well, at least they haven't been able to draw 3 with it. Considered not attacking with Herbalist to get the extra mana to maybe kick the Firebending Lesson end of turn. Now 4 mana. Alright, I guess I'll keep being patient. They'll have to play a creature at some point. They're gonna target the Swarm, so then this would get exiled, so I don't get to draw a card. I guess I'll take it out myself. So I at least draw a card. And now Accumulate Wisdom is online, so next turn I could draw 6 cards. Yeah, I think we can tap this for 2 blue mana. Cast Wisdom. How about another one? And then now we probably want to get on the board with another Swarm. Can go Swarm plus Roots again. Could also play Ren and Shaw. Might run into a counterspell if they're playing the Quench. So let's just go for Swarm first, and then Roots. And I don't care if this gets countered. Opponent finally gets to draw 3 with the Wisdom. That's the 3rd copy. But they're behind on board. And Glacierwood Siege. Naming Teamer. Is their opponent gonna mill me? They're gonna mill themselves. Pay the ward. So once again exiled, so I don't get to draw. And yeah, milling all those lessons can be good if they're going for Iroh to later replay them, I suppose. So what's my best play? Can go Ren and Shaw and play the Swarm. Hope there's no board wipe. That applies the most pressure. I can even draw some more cards here. Yeah, that seems reasonable. Master Paku, another mill card. a pillar launch. We'll mill 4. I guess that's the combo with Master Paku, to keep tapping and untapping it and mill someone out. But yeah, it looks like we have lethal here. Can also clear a path. Maybe at sorcery speed, and I can respond with instant. And we can also pump up our dragons. And did we get there? Looks like we did. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have Shared Roots to get blue mana, so yeah, I'll keep. May as well keep up Firebending Lesson turn 1. Or I can play this tapped. I guess they're not super likely to have a must-answer 1-drop. Tapped Sacred Foundry. Alright, so hopefully they present some targets for our creature removal, so we can eventually draw 3 with Wisdom. Alright, can Shared Roots, leave up red. And get probably another blue source. Maybe some sort of mobilized deck would make sense in these colors. Iroh Tea Master. So when it enters, make a food. I guess we'll just take it out here. Find targets. And now I get to play Uncle Iroh, immediately draw 3. Maybe hit a land drop. And then I could draw 3 again. Can do so at instant speed. Demonic Pact, interesting. I can bounce it with a Boomerang Basics. So I guess, yeah, our opponent's trying to gift it with Iroh Tea Master. That makes a lot of sense. Alright, so can just bounce it. And then make them spend 4 mana replaying it. In the meantime, deploy my dragon. That seems fine. No real way to spend the firebending mana. Play this, leave a blue. Well, if our opponent's got board wipes, we could be in trouble, since I don't have any real pressure once the board is swept. But we can maybe get another nice attack in here. Greed's Gambit, another one of those effects. They do get to make a bunch of bats, although they don't line up great against my 1 damage to each creature. Alright, so what's my sequencing? Deal 1 to each creature, attack, and then maybe pump my dragons up. Seems fine. So let's see, I'll get 4. So I won't have enough for 3 activations. But I can activate twice. And that should be lethal here. Alright, and that'll do it. Awesome. So we get to see this Teamer Lessons deck in action. And yeah, the deck went through a few iterations. I've tried a few other cards that synergize with Lessons, but those didn't quite pull their weight. So ended up with a more spell-dense version with more instants and sorceries, more Lessons in general. And I think that's been playing out a little bit better, since the deck does need a lot of card velocity. We want to see a lot of cards. And then at some point with a full graveyard, we get to pump up our dragons, as well as enable the double Iroh combo, where we maybe get to replay all those Lessons for free, which is also pretty sweet. But yeah, there's a lot of lessons to choose from, so a lot more fine-tuning to be done, and you can always adjust the deck to maybe fit better into certain metagames where you might want different answers. But for now, I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, And as always, have a nice day.